a lot of people talk about NFTs like it is the end product. Okay. Um, because they again, like I said, they don't care about what happens in the real world. They only think virtual, and they think that in the virtual world anything goes, right? And they think that the NFT is actually the end product. Now, it is not. It is definitely not the end product. I am 100% behind why all of the governments are trying to prevent speculation on NFTs, because no one has actually articulated what exactly are you buying when you buy the NFT, right? And that is a real problem today. Okay, we've spoken to, like I said, a lot of partnership companies. We've spoken to a lot of funds, and no one actually clearly can identify what exactly they're trying to do with the NFTs. Now, the NFT, in reality, I'm going to try and go down to real the common denominator. It's kind of like a piece of paper with a never repeating serial number. Okay, so therefore, an NFT is always one of a kind. It's always unique because the serial number is never being repeated. Okay, but you and I know that there are billions of pieces of paper out there. Just because a piece of paper is unique doesn't make it valuable, and doesn't actually create any value for us in the real world. Okay, and that's the real problem that we're facing today. Now, if you then go one step further and you look at what you write into an NFT, okay, for example, if you go to OpenSea, you go to Rarible, these are like the major and most famous NFT platforms. You realize that they give you three fields to fill in, right? The name of the NFT, the description of the NFT, and a link. Okay, so effectively, you have a piece of paper that have these three things, right? You've got a name, you've got a description, and you've got a link. Now, so what did you get in that piece of paper? Look, a piece of paper in the real world, a piece of paper can have value depending on what you write on it. Okay, I always say, for example, if the building that's outside right next to ours right now, if its title deed is written into the piece of paper, then that piece of paper is now has the value of that building. Okay, but if you don't write the title deed of the building onto the piece of paper, it is worthless. Okay, and if you go into OpenSea and you mint an NFT and the only three things you write on it is the name, description, and the link, again, it is worthless. Why? Very simple. The name and description is very simple because it's just whatever you want to type into it. Okay, now the secret or the key to an NFT is actually the link. Now the link gets complicated. In a lot of the PFPs, we call it profile photos, right? Like the crypto punks and the bored apes and the mutant bored apes. The link actually, they don't even put in enough effort to decide what they put into the link, because that link actually mostly points to a centralized server or a website or a web page that belongs to some company or to belongs to someone. Okay, what that means is that if that company or if that website is ever shut down, that link would disappear forever, which means that the NFT that you hold in your hand is now even worse because you don't even have the link to the image that it was supposed to represent. Okay, number one, first problem. Okay, so some people decide that, oh, okay, why not we try to be a little bit more responsible to the NFT holder. What they do is, I think most of us has heard, is that they do a link to an IPFS. Okay, I don't know how many people have heard of this. It's the Interplanetary File System. Now, the Interplanetary File System is actually somewhere between Web 2.0 and Web 3.0. It is not really Web 3.0 because it actually functions like the BitTorrent of the old days. You know how in the BitTorrent of the old days, you have multiple people holding different servers, having the same file, but in order to download that file, you can grab data from various different servers, right? So that's actually what IPFS does. It's a BitTorrent system. Okay. Now, the problem with that is that if all of the servers get shut down all at the same time, that link gets erased and it disappears, right? So what we've done, or what we've experienced when we first initially did NFTs, was that we have to constantly seed the IPFS in order to ensure that the link never disappears, right? And that gives very little protection to the NFT holder. Okay, so that is definitely also a problem. Now, the real solution today is that there are a number of blockchains out there that allow you to create permanent web pages. Okay, so these web pages are actually uploaded onto the blockchain so that they're immutable, they are not amendable, and therefore whatever information you put on there will technically speaking never disappear. Right. Of course, again, as long as the blockchain exists, it will never disappear. Okay. And then you have to go back one step and say, okay, how do I ensure that this blockchain never disappears? Right. And we will use, for example, blockchains where they have some kind of a insurance or a guarantee, where there are some blockchains that literally bought an insurance to guarantee that their permanent web pages will never disappear for the next 200 years. Now, those are the people we like to work with. Okay, so that is the first part, which is to make sure that you identify a link, put it onto a blockchain where you have maximum protection for the NFT holder. Now, then we come on to my second problem. Now,
Julian, sorry, are there examples of those sort of blockchains?
Oh yeah, so the blockchain that we love to use is Arweave, ARWEAVE. They actually have the insurance that guarantees the existence of the web page for 200 years. So that's what we like to use, and a lot of people actually like to use them as we move forward into the future. But not many people know about them, and it's a very good discovery that we had. Okay, now that we have identified how to ensure that the link is permanent and the information we put onto that link is permanent, the second question is, we know that from a legal perspective, if you were to create a digital image or digital file or video file or media file, the creator always owns the intellectual property to that image or to that file. Okay, just by simply putting the link onto the NFT does not transfer any of the intellectual property and does not accord any license to the person that has bought or that holds the NFT. So that is actually a major problem. Okay, a very good example, and the one transaction that got all of us excited, which was last year in March, was the Beeple 5,000 day transaction. Okay, so the guy we kind of know the guy who bought that in Singapore. He paid $69 million US for it. He has a different purpose for paying $69 million for it, because he was trying to really, and he actually successfully created a lot of hype over NFTs. But separately, he was trying to build interest in his NFT fund. Okay. Now, but the interesting thing was this, right? So when we had a chat with him, he was saying that, okay, after he bought that particular artwork, he was trying to decide whether he could print it out onto a large poster, which he can then frame up and hang it in his office, or hang it in his home, or even hang it in his restaurant. And he realized that it says nowhere in the NFT that he could do anything with the image. So that becomes a problem, right? Because he doesn't even know what he owns. So what he had to do was he had to go back to Christie's, ask them to deal with this problem, because he needs to know exactly what he has purchased, right? And what Christie had to do was they had to create a separate license agreement with the artist so that they can identify what licensing rights has been granted to the guy who bought the NFT. Now that is a serious problem, because we all know that the reason why we use NFT as a tool is because it's supposed to deal with provenance issues. It's supposed to deal with transactions, right? It's supposed to address all the trust issues that we've got. But it becomes really ridiculous and mind-boggling when you realize you still need to look towards a signed license agreement to determine what exactly you have purchased, right? So in reality, the value of the artwork, all of it was actually in the license agreement and not even in the NFT. And that makes a joke out of the whole transaction. Okay? Now, we continue to emphasize that we're very different from everyone else out there. And another example I want to give you is, for example, recently, I think Sotheby's also did an auction of a physical art piece. And then they also said that it came with an NFT. Okay? Now, same problem. in that particular case, the NFT had nothing to do with the physical art piece, right? It was maybe a video file of how the painting came about, okay? But it came like a greeting card. It was not actually a digital ownership title to the art piece. So there was no linkage between the NFT and the art piece. And again, it does not really solve the provenance issues that we've got in the arts and collectibles industry today, right? And that's what our company or our group of companies are trying to do. We are trying to use the NFT only as a tool, right, to solve the real world problems that we face today. And that is where I think the real value of NFT is. And I personally wouldn't go and buy an NFT and do. I mean, look, if you want to join the hype and if you're early in the speculation, you can still make very good money. A lot of my friends have made very good money from the NFTs. But bear this in mind: you have on paper, you have in the real world at least, you've actually bought nothing. You've got no rights, no legal protection. There's nothing physical that you've purchased. As soon as no one else is willing to buy that thing from you, it immediately becomes worthless, right? So it's only worth as much as what the next person is willing to pay you for, and I think that's something that we all have to bear in mind. And similarly, Neil, you mentioned earlier about how you're looking a few years ahead to see what kind, how you can get yourself involved in this metaverse industry or the NFT industry, is to make sure that these companies are doing are actually selling something of value, and it's not really just about hype and just about novelty. I think that's the second topic that I wanted to talk about, which is really trying to explain what the NFT is to all of you. So again, I'll stop here, and in case there are any other questions.